Just like millions of other young people, she wields the little red book carrying the words of the chairman.
Very proud, of course. They had to go straight to the photographer, and we took photos. I came home and my father said, "How did you get that?" I told him. Father said, "Yes, you are very intelligent. That's a good thing. That protects our family."
Mao sends his Red Guards into a war of symbols. He considers China's traditions and culture to be anti-socialist and seeks to destroy them. It's an adventure for young people. They get to storm temples and palaces, destroying and defacing the old images. In June 1966, Mao even closes the schools and universities. The Cultural Revolution becomes a kind of exciting mission for young people.
Back then, I was not quite 18, I think, and it felt like freedom. We were all free. We could run around all over the place and criticize. We went out a lot because it was summer. We went swimming. So for me, it felt like a period of liberation.
In autumn 1966, Mao receives his Red Guards 8 times for enormous parades in Peking. Mao calls on young people to rise up against the alleged capitalist elite and their cultural symbols. Above all, against his political opponent, Liu Shaoqi. Members of the European left wing are also fascinated by the propaganda images from China and the slogans depicting a vibrant, secure socialism that isn't stifled by bureaucracy.
What at first looked like paradise on earth wasn't really. It was in fact a constant struggle. For example, I was studying in Vienna then, and we would never have dreamed of having any kind of allegiance with Soviet communism. I mean, Bratislava or Pressburg is right next door. Just 60 kilometers from Vienna, right? Of course, we were all there. We knew the state of affairs in Prague and so forth. It was really a nightmare. None of us wanted that, though.
Today, Karl-Peter Schwarz is the Eastern European correspondent for the Frankfurter Allgemeine newspaper. In 1970, he joined a Maoist group at Vienna University.
The phrase "rebellion is justified wherever it occurs" spoke to us so powerfully back then. Rebellion in itself is justified and the essence of the revolutionaries, and for us, the Cultural Revolution was just that.
Back then, Reinhard Bütikofer, the former chairman of the Green Party, was also interested in Maoist ideas.
The focus wasn't so much on a theoretical system, and at the beginning it wasn't even about a larger understanding, but rather it was the idea that surely a utopia should be possible somewhere.
In protest against US involvement in the Vietnam War, many students become more and more sympathetic to leftist causes in Western Europe. Mao becomes an icon of youth uprising and resistance to imperialism. Armed with sentiments from the Mao Bible, they passionately reject the dusty old elites of the war generation and dream of a more just world.
Being a revolutionary, an admirable concept in itself, is that one must, to a certain extent, overcome a sense of separation between one's head and one's hands. So it's not the case that some people just sit in an office and the others only have to carry out the tasks, but rather the managers also have to take part in the manual work.
Maoist leftism grows especially popular in France. Some young people devote themselves entirely to the Maoist revolution.
My life changed fundamentally when I became a Maoist. I started to see the future completely differently. I was a student of sociology, and when Maoism came into my life, I went to work in a factory.
Daniel Palot was visiting a Maoist group in the small industrial town of Saint-Chamond. She's showing her daughter Isabelle this major landmark in her radical political past for the first time.
We wanted to get to the workers and encourage them to start a revolution from the bottom up, against the authorities, against the capitalist system, against the employers. It didn't work, but we wanted to apply everything that we thought of as Maoism. We wanted that at least.
Daniel Palot finds employment in a textile factory and tries to inspire the other workers to rise up. The inspiration comes from China.
We couldn't imagine anything better than going to China ourselves and seeing what was happening there. We wanted to get involved over there and apply that experience in France because we were fighting for a revolution in France and we thought it would come.
But getting a visa for China is impossible. The country is virtually sealed off, apart from the stream of propaganda leaving it.
So China became a kind of projection screen of our revolutionary hopes. It had something very religious about it. Religious in the sense that we needed to go to make that pilgrimage. Yet we didn't know exactly what it would look like when we got there, really. And all the ambiguous information, the less information there was about it, the better, really.
In China, the Cultural Revolution is advancing. Instead of going to lessons, the young people are out in the service of Mao. The Red Guards harass their supposed enemies evermore. A cleansing campaign begins in schools and universities against tutors and intellectuals.
And when I came back to Beijing, my brother said, "You'll never know, they caught a spy in the university. Can you imagine who?" And I said, "Oh, could it be this? Could it be that? There's a suspicious, Yugoslav. There's whoever." But then they said, "No, it's your dad."
As an English professor at the University for Foreign Languages, Paul's father David becomes one of the Red Guards' first targets.
I couldn't believe it. And they said, "Oh, it must be a mistake, obviously." But anyway, that's the reality. He's not at home.
Although Paul's father is locked up in a high-security prison, Paul's mother, Isabel, does not lose faith in Mao's vision.
We were worried, we were concerned, but also we were told we have to have faith in the party and faith in the masses, as Mao put it.
Mao is now also enlisting young people and workers whose parents are not of the proletariat to fight for him. Various different groups are fighting for dominance. Everybody wants to prove that they are fighting for Mao more radically than the next.
If you were the object of struggle, you had to show humility, and the guards ensure that you showed as much as possible.
People who are considered to be class enemies are being exposed everywhere.
The objects of the struggle were lined up on the stage with heavy bricks holding his head down, and contorted bodies with hands stretched behind the back, and then to say, "I am a Mao monster. Yes, indeed, I tried to subvert Chairman Mao's revolutionary line."
Suspects are confronted with their supposed crimes in huge gatherings.
People were very fervently shouting slogans and condemning them, and I felt very much that I must try and participate in this. But at the same time, I had a contradictory feeling of this is a cruel thing that was happening.
13-year-old Paul begins to lose faith while his father sits in prison.
I think at that time, the parameters of what was shocking and terrible was probably, we were stretched to a point, that it's happening everywhere, maybe it's normal.
Alleged counter-revolutionaries are paraded openly on trucks on the roads leading to the public gatherings. Irene Eckleben is still taking pictures. Her photos are some of the few pieces of evidence we have of this practice.
In the middle is a woman with a giant, like a magician's hat in the German and European fairy tales. Like a bag of sweets in the shape of a cone, she is the outlaw. It was frightening, truly frightening.
Radical members of the Red Guard travel from the capital to all parts of China, including Shenyang in northern China.
Nothing but 15 and 16-year-olds, young children, all with weapons, wanting to show us how to go about a cultural revolution. How can you fight against people like that? There's one wielding a bicycle chain, a young girl, around 14 years old, going around hitting people over the head with it. I saw that. That hurt me so much.
The Red Guard is still hunting down symbols of the old society. They destroy anything that falls into their hands. Gudrun Alba fears that her comrades' anger could be turned against her mother's guardian angel picture.
She thought about it, at first wanting to hide it in the cellar downstairs. I said, please don't do that. They might come. They might search everywhere.
Gudrun and her brothers convinced their mother to give up the picture.
Then they tore it down and burned it. I'm not sure exactly.
Well, wood, with a bit of hay, grass, to set fire to it.
Now, only one worshipped idol is left in Gudrun's family.
Then we just hung a lot of Mao photos in the same place. All of Mao. In one room, all 4 walls were covered in Mao photos.
The Red Guard's rage is now out of control. Anyone who falls into their hands is locked up in makeshift cells and sheds. The terror increasingly intrudes into Paul Crook's life in Peking. After already having captured his father, they now target his mother.
Well, she was, asked to attend what you could call interrogation sessions, sessions to help clarify the truth about my father, but about what she was doing.
The interrogations are endless. In the end, Isabel Crook is no longer allowed to go home at night anymore.
She didn't think she would stay very long, but the next day they came and asked for her toothbrush, and then they came for a few more things, and eventually we recognized that she was not coming home anytime soon.
The Cultural Revolution brings the country to a standstill. There is widespread chaos and terror. At the end of 1968, Mao applies the emergency brake. He orders the Red Guards to leave the cities and head to the country to work there. Around 20 million young people set off ecstatically. It's explained to them that they will learn from the farmers' revolutionary spirit. This is the time when Dieter and Ann-Kathrin Becker come to China as new correspondents for the GDR. As children of the German state of workers and farmers, they have a positive perspective on China and its revolutionary leader.
My favorite is this porcelain badge, the young Mao. At the time, he hadn't committed any major crimes yet, and he still had honest and fair objectives.
Peking is the first foreign posting for the Beckers. Mao had largely sealed China off, even to the other socialist countries. The media coverage of China in the GDR hardly covers the extreme aspects of the Cultural Revolution at all.
Yes, if you look closely, here was a country that had made tremendous progress in the 50s, and I had always been really quite interested in China then. Of course, wonderful things had been written about China in the GDR, and I was really fascinated by it.
And then you arrived there and saw it. And all the excitement fizzled out when seeing operations that were completely pointless. I mean, not completely pointless. Mao Zedong had managed to silence his opponents, but that was all. And all of that was at the expense of the ordinary population. And that is a shame.
Yet the Beckers experienced the start of a new period in China. After years of isolation, Mao ironically turns towards the West of all places. In January 1972, American President Richard Nixon arrives in Peking. It's a political sensation.
It was quite an opening. Diplomatic relations with the Federal Republic of Germany were also starting to take shape, and China was becoming more open to the world. It was previously quite cut off, of course.
By meeting with Nixon, the now 78-year-old Mao was initiating a careful opening up of his country. Now even Mao supporters in the West could hope to travel to China themselves.
There was a German-Chinese friendship society that offered the chance to travel to China. And so I said I'd like to go too. And then it became possible.
When we heard the news that a group of us women might be able to travel to China and see the liberation of women there, well, it was an absolute adventure.
But Danielle Palot now has a young daughter, Isabelle, who is only 3 months old.
I had to decide whether to stay with my daughter and continue to breastfeed her or to travel to China. But I was a Maoist after all, and adventure was calling. It was hard, but I left my daughter behind with her father and travelled to China.